Hey everyone, and welcome back to episode 6 of AAPI History. My name is Shreya Joshi, and I'm a youth intern at Monsoon. In today's episode, we'll discuss the effects of COVID-19 on the API community, as well as the powerful wave of social justice initiatives that are shaping the way society views AAPI folk. For our final episode, let's start off not with history, but today's recent reality. Hashtag #StopAAPIHate started when hatred against Pacific Islander Americans and Asian Americans skyrocketed due to COVID-19, since the first case of COVID originated in China. In 2020 alone, hate crimes against the AAPI community rose by over 150%, and #StopAAPIHate received over 3,975 discriminatory incident reports. A more recent study done by the Center for the Study of Hate and Extremism found that anti-Asian hate crimes rose by 339% when compared to 2020 in 2021. Asian elders have been beaten, Asian kids harassed, and of course the Atlanta shootings, where 8 women were murdered, 6 of whom were Asian women. Many people were surprised that Asian Americans were dealing with such hate, but the truth is that hate has always been there. And one of the most infamous hate crimes was the murder of Vincent Chen. On June 19, 1982, Vincent Chen, a Chinese American man, went out with his friends to a strip club to celebrate his upcoming wedding, during what was the worst downturn for US automakers. Japan was cutting off profits, which led to the layoff of hundreds of thousands of Americans in the auto industry. Later that night, 2 white men, named Ronald Evans and his stepson Michael Nitz, mistook Vincent as a Japanese person. They berated him verbally, screaming, "It's because of you, you little mother, that we're out of work." And then once kicked out of the club, they berated him physically. Evans grabbed a bat from his car and chased Vincent. When Evans and Nitz found Vincent, they beat him with the baseball bat over and over again. He died 4 days later due to the injuries. Eben and Nitz were never charged and never spent a day in jail. The judge, in 1982, said that these aren't the kind of men you send to jail, which prompted people around the country to ask, who are the kinds of men, then, that America sends to jail? If the roles were reversed, would the court have made the same decision? This failure of the criminal justice system had AAPI folks, black folks, and all types of other allies band together to protest. This case paved the way for change all around the world and called for stricter consequences on hate crimes in the US. Provisions that have gotten justice for many today. And although Vincent Chen and his family haven't received justice, his case paved the movement for generations to come. Social coalitions aren't new, though they've definitely been redefined over the past few years. Through the power of social media, millions of voices are amplified. For example, #NotYourAsianSidekick in 2013. Originally started by Sui Park, a social justice activist, this hashtag has been used worldwide. Oftentimes, from movies to books to TV shows to history, the Asian character is always a sidekick. They're the quirky, diverse best friend that doesn't actually have a significant plot point. From Lane Kim in Gilmore Girls, to Kelly Kapoor in The Office, to Dr. Helen Cho in The Avengers, Asian people always seem to be a second thought, both in media and in society. #NotYourAsianSidekick is a civil rights movement that responds to patriarchy, marginalization, racism, and mainstream feminism, problems that many AAPI women deal with. Thankfully, we can see more Asian Americans stepping into main roles, from Shang-Chi in The Legend of the Ten Rings, which if you haven't seen by now is a must, to roles like VP with Vice President Kamala Harris. But the issues that catalyzed hashtag not your Asian sidekick, well, it's easy to see, like College Board would say, change and continuity. From the Asiatic barred zones in 1917, when the US banned immigration from all of Asia, from the Middle East to the Indian subcontinent to the Pacific Islands, to the rising, ever present sentiment that API people are taking American jobs, or to the idea that API folks simply don't belong in America, even if they were born here. These are the exact sentiments that murdered Vincent Chen and the sentiments that continue to fuel murder today. In 2018, in Kansas, two Indian men, Srinivas Kuchibhotla and Alok Madasani, and a third man, Ian Grillett, who tried to intervene, were shot. The shooter yelled, "Get out of my country." 2 days later, another Indian man, Deep Rai, was shot outside his home in Washington. His shooter yelled, "Go back to where you came from." Keep in mind, this was in 2018. But this violence against South Asian and West Asian folks is nothing new. From the Washington Bellingham riots in 1907, when a mob of 500 people beat and looted hundreds of Indian men to scare them so they wouldn't crowd out the labor market, to the backlash of 9/11 when hate for South Asian and West Asians spiked. Sikhs, or Sikhs, followers of Sikhism, were also targeted because of the turban they wear. 9/11 was a terrible terrorist attack that killed over 2,000 people. Unfortunately, its aftermath killed people too. On September 15th, 2001, 4 days after 9/11, Balbir Singh Sodhi, a Sikh immigrant, was killed by Frank Silva Rook. That day, Frank reportedly told friends that he was going to go out to shoot some towel heads. In another incident, a white supremacist named Mark Anthony Stroman killed 2 men and injured a third during a shooting spree. The people he targeted were of Muslim descent, and a decade later, Stroman was executed. Religious buildings were also a subject of target. Mosques and other Islamic institutions were often vandalized, sometimes even burned. The following year, 2002, these institutions saw a substantial increase in anti-Muslim hate crimes. A common motto after 9/11 was "United we stand," but sometimes that doesn't mean the same for those who look different. When we look back on US history, we see those who went above and beyond to change who we included in the motto "United we stand." One such person was Iowa Governor Robert D. Ray. Ray was an ally for immigrants, specifically those of Southeast Asian descent. During the 1980s, Southeast Asians, specifically the Taidam, faced turmoil due to bombing, whose source we covered in video 5, and war. They fled their home seeking refuge, and Ray chose to bring these Southeast Asians to Iowa. During this time, President Ford only allowed $500 in aid for the resettling of immigrants and refugees. Ray urged the U.S. government to make an exception for group resettlement, which was previously not allowed, and won the case. After multiple visits to Southeast Asia, he came back to Iowa. He held conferences where he spoke out about the atrocities the refugees faced in the camps and showed pictures. Iowans from all walks of life donated and helped raise funds for the refugees. Robert D. Ray said, "I didn't think we could just sit here idly and say, 'Let those people die.' We wouldn't want the rest of the world to say that about us if we were in the same situation. Do unto others as you'd have them do unto you." Because of Robert D. Ray, thousands of Vietnamese, Lao, Thai Dam, and Cambodian people were able to continue their legacy in the heart of America, which is Iowa. Legacies of Asian and Pacific Islander Americans continue to shape both API Americans and America itself. And we're always learning more about those legacies. The question is whether or not we can learn from the information and the history we uncover. Learning from history is crucial because those who don't will make the same mistakes. And the more we learn, the hope is the more we can move forward and the more we can understand. But we can't do that if history is one-sided. To quote Gyasi, in history, we believe the one who has the power. They are the ones who write the story. So when you study history, you must ask yourself whose voice was suppressed so their voice could come forward. You must always find that suppressed voice too. We hope that these 6 videos have brought forward voices that were suppressed in history and voices that may be suppressed today. There's obviously more to AAPI history than we could fit in 6 videos, and there's history of other marginalized voices that seeks uncovering. So always remember to find those voices. Thank you very much for listening to this final installment of AAPI History, brought to you by the Monsoon VPP team. If you'd like to see more work done by us, check out our socials. Thanks for watching!